Welcome back to the Fuse Show, everybody. I'm joined today by my guest, David Ledgerwood. Ledge is a B2B sales expert and 13X founder. He's a managing partner at Add1Zero, which provides outsourced revenue and sales functions for tech-enabled B2B service companies looking to leap from 6 to 7 figures of annual revenue. He co-hosts the Leaders of B2B podcast and is the proud father of 5. Welcome to the show, Ledge.
It's good to be here, Jim. Nice to hang out again.
Proud father of 5. Like I too am a proud father of 5. Like it's a small miracle that you're here, that we're both here right now.
Right. I always say I earned my haircut, not just from startups. The hardest thing I think in the world, if you're not a parent, so parenting is the only thing harder than startuping. I actually call them my organic startups. So you don't get to A/B split test. You only get one go.
Well, I don't know. The one piece on that, I feel like we are kind of, because I started out with my 2 stepkids. So my wife's 12 years older. Yep. My stepkids are my oldest stepdaughter is only 10 years younger than me. So I come on board 22 years old. She's 12 years old. So I had my first crack at it with a teenager. Mm-hmm. And now our kids that we've had together are teenagers. So I'm like, all right, this is kind of a round 2 for me.
You made it.
I'm not scared, but
I also have a blended family situation with 2 sons of my own and 3 stepdaughters. And we actually have a commuter marriage. So my wife lives in Dallas. I live in Nashville. So we're each about 90% single parent. I call it solo parenting since we're not single, but we're on our own. And we get together every other weekend. So the joke is, half the people say, man, that must be so hard. And half the people say, hey, can you get my wife to do that? And so,
it's funny. My wife and I are considering sleeping in separate rooms. It's let's go back to the drawing board and consider, whoever told us we had to do things this way? It's we wake each other up in the middle of the night, and I know that some people are, probably feeling that's a sign of a marriage on the rocks or something. But I'm like, come on. That's we'd sleep better. I think we'd enjoy each other's company more. Why not give it a shot,
Right? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, one thing that's true is we get to miss each other. And, when we get together, there's anticipation and excitement and, having something to look forward to. But getting over that middle weekend is always, sort of tough. That's our actual hump day, is that middle Sunday. We're just this is depressing. I wish we could hang out a little bit. So.
Yeah.
But good for you guys, we're busy all the time, always busy.
But I think it's great to just, forget all the rules and consider what works best for you guys.
It's a good metaphor for our, shared startup life. That's for sure.
Totally.
Let's not make assumptions. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, speaking of, let's jump to Add1Zero. I'd love to know a little bit more about what you guys do and the audience that you serve.
Yeah. Niche audience. Over the course of my many entrepreneurial singles, doubles, and strikeouts, I came to understand that it's interesting because we have all kinds of abilities as founders and regularly use it. I mean, you guys know, I could outsource my customer success. I could outsource my customer service. I could get fractional COO, CFO, CMO, any of these things. Yeah. But if you really, really looked, I couldn't find a fractional revenue officer, VP of sales, or really closer, And so that's just people want money. They need revenue more than they actually need consulting or coaching or training or, the ability to buy outbound lead gen services, or there's all kinds of stuff that are, expensive and in our world. And I just started to wonder, why can't we do actual fractional closing? If we focus on revenue and I like services companies. So it's a B2B services. I say tech enabled because it's almost moot at this point. We all had to be this way now, but we started prior to, everybody's stuck at home, everybody's on Zoom all the time. And it was a little weird, we'd have to have that argument well, you can't sell what we do on Zoom. We need to press the flesh and, visit people. And so, okay, and a lot of those people called back in the last year, said, please help us sell on Zoom. But I have been and have worked for and with the founders who have brute force had to do sales. You've got to get this company up to something that is plausible in that $250,000 to $500,000 type of annual revenue, which effectively demonstrates we at least have a thing. We have some customers. They'll pay us for it. Product or service market fit. It's not a go-to-market problem, right? And a lot of times those people actually do have leads. They just kind of can't figure out what to do with them. Or how do I scale this? And the other thing that happens at that point, really consistently, I'm nearly certain of this, is you kind of get to that point as a founder, you go, all right, I can either keep selling and I need an operator to run my business, actually scale my team and scale my services and all those things, or I can become an operator, but I'm screwed because nobody knows how to sell. And what do I do at that point? And the typical answers or available answers when I looked was, well, I can hire an outbound, SDR, or your proverbial, and I hate this phrase, but you hear it all the time, the young and hungry commission-only sales rep. And I hate that.
Yeah,
but
the ones
it's
that
true.
you buy in spite of them, not because of them.
Right. Or hire a VP of sales. I'm going to get a closer with a Rolodex, somebody who's done this before. And all of those are rife with issues at that particular stage of company development in services. You simply do not have enough money to hire that person, and a lot of people will go out and blow an incredible amount of money on it, and also find at that point your VP of sales actually wants to manage and grow a sales team. They kind of don't want to go and be closer anymore because they they perceive that they're kind of and maybe have earned themselves up in the world where let's build a sales organization. Well, that doesn't help me close money. And we wanted to slide in there and make a solution that said, look, while we build you a playbook, while we build you a scalable revenue operation, we need to be on calls and we need to close you business. So I said, okay, what's that look like? And, it was kind of like that critical 10x stage between 500K and 5 million is the area where the founder and operator needs to be paying attention and building and scaling and working on customer success and working on quality assurance and all the things. I mean, there's just so much to do there. They can't also be selling. If they don't want to be selling at that point, you didn't have a good set of options. So let's slide in there and build that thing. And that's what we did. And, the kiss of death or the stupidest thing I tell an entrepreneur never to say is nobody else is doing this, because that's probably like a boondoggle for all kinds of reasons. But I don't know. We just did what I thought made sense. And I set up a team and my partner particularly who, I said, I can't do this without you because I suck at doing the things you do. So I think that's an important, entrepreneurial story as well. But we just set out and said, I don't know why this is impossible. I know why it's hard, but let's do this because I think this is necessary. And we came up with our sort of not mission or vision or it's like that didn't resonate with us. But what did resonate was this sort of passion statement coming out of my own experience. Like any founder we work with will never have to worry about cash flow again. And that paired with a ridiculous focus on revenue is really where it all kind of came together. We started playbooking that, and some awesome early clients gave us a shot to sort of say, "Hey, can we try this thing on you?
Yeah.
Want to be our crash test dummy for this? I think this will work." But and then on the other side is you're supposed to have done all kinds of planning and revenue modeling and thinking all right, how's my business model look? And I cooked all that up in my head into this big celestial spreadsheet, and that could have been a total mess. But it turned out I was right about that. So, I don't know. I think it's collection of experiences and identifying a thing that sucked and that there ought to be a better solution for, and then figuring out how to build that. And, that's the path, right? So.
Yeah. So, Ledge, do most of your clients have a steady stream of leads coming in? They just need help closing? Or do you also work with clients that need to find leads to be able to close?
You would have difficulty getting to the point that we enter if you didn't have some leads. And I would advise people that if you do not have 5 sort of inbound prospect kind of people that are trying to book a meeting with you, let me just advise you on how to think about and do that, get your business to that point. It's just simply not sustainable prior to that. 5 a week, yeah. Now, if you have a big ticket item, like we don't have that for our business. So, I mean, it can vary. But let's say you're, a sort of a regular, like we work with a lot of premium agency, professional service, stuff like that, where it's clearly a B2B service. And I would advise that, we're not affordable unless someone has at least some kind of flow to sink your teeth into.
Yeah. What kind of I don't know, ARR would you expect one of your clients to generate if they sold or if you sold a deal?
ARR is, you could extrapolate. So, I mean, we want to look for companies that, I think of it, MRR is more our world. Sure. At least like a $3,000 MRR type of situation, or, average contract value of a single project, that at least approaches about 10,000 would be the limit where it will become affordable. And that's where your agency work, agency and project work, high value scope type of stuff works best. It won't, I don't know what we would do with somebody that had, even a $500 a month or $1,000 a month. Like, it's just not affordable. You need too much volume.
Yeah. So I'm curious, the AEs that are closing deals, what is your general expectation? We're talking, B2B service world. What is your general expectation on the percentage of deals that they would close?
It seems to, it's funny because like expectation, is really that like, so what's your goal, or what's your quota, kind of thing, right? And I have a video about this because I just kind of think that's at this size of company and this type of company, I understand people need to budget, but I more often than not find the budget or goal comes from, here's how much money we want to spend. Therefore, we need that much sales. And that's not realistic. But I can tell you that we would typically walk into a company. On average, it's been the call to close ratio is kind of our favorite metric. And that is at best 6 to 10% usually when we walk in. And we've been able to raise that on average to about 22%. And so that seems to be the peak. I don't know if I bet additional qualification and sort of refining in the funnel. There's all types of things that you would get into further down the road to drive that up.
Let me ask you this on that note before we move on. I want to dig a little bit deeper. So my thought was like, what, and I want to hear from you because you have a lot more experience than I do in this area. But pre-sales call. If we share with them our one pager, we make it clear what our pricing is, show them our deck, and then my co-founder and I are in the final stages of putting together a very lengthy video sales letter. We're talking like over an hour that just fully explains our ethos, the way we do things, the way we treat people, etc. And the hypothesis is if we share all of that with them, we recognize a certain percentage of people won't view that, or maybe they'll view part of it, but they'll probably glance at the one pager, and they at least understand the range that we charge. If they're a bad fit, I'd like to think that we wouldn't end up on a sales call, and thus we'd have fewer sales calls, but they'd be more qualified. Yep. But I guess there's downside potentially, right? Like we would maybe scare somebody away that didn't get a chance to connect with us, right? Curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's a balance. So ideally, we want to come into a company and optimize the funnel activities such that it drives meetings. So first, don't put the gates up. So no qualifying questions on the form. Don't expose stuff that will scare people away. And that's just so let's get the highest possible sample size of what actually will get through the door, knowing that a fair number of those calls will be crap. Or a lot of times at the beginning when you do that, the no-show rate is terrible. But then having done that, we can accumulate, and we will do this, which record every call that we have and use that data set to actually mine the recordings and write down every question that gets asked by a prospect.
Nice.
And so there's the sales kind of intelligence process to it. Then we're working on, this is kind of my pet project, we're trying to build a taxonomy sort of categorization system that's standardized for objections and feature-based questioning. Okay. So, basically, what's a B2B sales objection look like? and can we find standard ways to categorize them? So we're working on that. That's kind of a fun project. But anyway, we take them all and we say, all right, was this a question about that's really an objection, or is this a question about a feature or something I want? And we look at those and we try to normalize that data set by saying, is this question really about the same thing as this one? And sort of coming up with a set of questions, rank them in quantity order as they happen. And then we look at those and we say, okay, it's clear that these 3-4 things are the most important thing that people want to know at this time when they get into the funnel. Mm-hmm. So those are content prompts. Let's take those, move those to the top of the funnel with very active sort of content, that because marketing gets you the opportunity to sort of do 1,000 to 1 type of broadcast, a many to 1. What you don't want is your people down at the bottom doing sales calls, answering all that crap that could have been answered at the top.
Makes sense.
So qualification gets better just based on having done that, because now I can say, okay, if I know people have consumed this or been exposed at least to this message, some will self-select out because they're not a fit. And so then further down the funnel, we can take the very more specific questions that you end up with as you continue that iterating process, and you make sales enablement materials out of those. Those are your specific case studies. Like, tell me about a company just like me where you drove a specific KPI. Mm-hmm. That's not marketing at the top because it doesn't apply to everybody. After pre-qualifying, you would have a sales enablement type of discussion. So once that happens, whenever somebody schedules a call, because again, we're appointment focused, so get a little bit of information in the form, hop yourself to a calendar, book a call. Then we drip them a 3-email pre-call sequence. Nice. That's specifically written to reinforce the 3 main things that you would have said on the call, but you want them to at least be exposed to that beforehand. And then they show up for the call, and what you've sort of done there is make sure that you qualify out just by activity and self-qualification some of the people that, just like, never mind, I can't afford $3,000 a month.
Right.
So you can expose that information in a way that's more organic and feels as if you're taking care of somebody better than when you have the, the contact form that just says, what's your annual budget? It's gross, right? Yeah. But I can have a service-oriented mindset where every lead is valuable and we care about you as a human, but it just might be the right fit for you right now. Here's how you would know, so we don't waste each other's time. Yeah. So imagine that happening in a looping fashion, because we are recording every call for months. We're doing the same analysis again, and what you find is each iteration of that, a different need arises that is sort of further down the content funnel, and you can prompt and you can explain and prompt and explain and prompt and explain. Ultimately, the best people get to the call. They're pre-educated the way you wanted them to be, and now we can actually have a rep sell instead of just being, sort of a one-to-one marketing mouthpiece. So that takes 90-ish days if you do it right, but you really start to drive up the call-to-close ratio by doing that.
Yeah. So I want you to help me dissect at least three schools of thought. So B2B service company, just under $1 million in ARR. They're looking to scale their sales organization and or build it. Founders have handled the sales to this point. Three options come to mind, and I'm sure there's more, but these 3 primary options come to mind. One is we work with a company like yours, right? So founder hires an organization like yours, kind of gets that playbook, gets the leadership there, help them scale. Another option is they hire one AE and mentor them, right? So the founder that does the selling mentors the AE, kind of helps them come up, trains them in the methodology that they've been using that's been working to get to that stage. Another option is, and I hear a lot of people talk about this, hire 2 AEs, encourage a friendly sense of competition, maybe put them through some training, do some mentorship, and let them kind of compete with each other as they work their way up. So I'm curious how you would analyze those options.
Well, the best one is hire us. So, like the second best option.
You better say that. I'd be like, this call's over if you don't say that.
The second option, yes, I would advise a founder, probably such as yourself, that is mindful of that. I mean, just the fact that you came up with that option and it includes mentoring and training by nature would tell me that you've already thought about this. And that puts you ahead of the spot, because while you're doing sales, you and your partner, let's say, whoever it is, you probably had the disposition to write down your playbook and do the work that we're already talking about and come up with a methodology and think about, in the future, I would like not to be in this seat. Thus, I must prepare the landing strip, with all kinds of documentation and objection handling and training and shadowing and mentoring, and I know this is going to happen. So it presupposes that disposition exists. A lot of people don't have that disposition as a founder. They've just been running around with their pants on fire and really didn't want to do sales anyway. So please get me out of this seat. I don't know how to hire an AE, because that's another assumption in the model right there. Hiring an AE completely sucks. It's very difficult. How do I find someone who cares as much as me, who can explain things like I do? You're also supposing that I'm going to duplicate my brain there as that founder. No one will ever care as much as you and have the passion as much as you. You can teach them a playbook, but they're really thinking about getting paid. You now have an employee, and that's just different. So there's all kinds of assumptions in number 2 that, were you to overcome them with a coach or a mentor or somebody who that you set out with the discipline to do that for a year, number 2 is probably the best option. Absent all of those rosy assumptions, that's more typically the situation that we see. I've never seen number 3. Interesting philosophy. I don't know that I would. Just not my disposition to set up a competitive landscape like that. I would tell you, if you could hire a great AE, that the next hire in rapid succession would be what we would call an ops administrator. So we do start with 2-member teams, but we call an AE a sales lead. So we have a sales lead and we have an ops administrator whose sole job is to be the support mechanism and team member, keep the sales lead, keep the rep on calls and effective, and do all the other things. So keep them on stage, and you run the theater, and you make the proposals, you send the emails, you do all the stuff. Make sure that person maximizes their call time.
Is that an SDR/researcher, or are we talking, is that a different role?
SDR tends, to my mind, to imply outbound. So I would say it's more like RevOps.
Okay.
Yeah, because they'll check the email of the person, manage all the tasks. What's the next thing in line? Are the proposals getting done? Has this been reviewed? Has that been reviewed? Gotcha. Proposals, contracts, what's next? These are administrators who are very good. So we'll actually, in effect, set up a relationship that you might have imagined as an executive assistant for the rep, but we position it as here's your peer, this is your team, you're a dynamic duo. Got it. The ops administrator very rarely even exposes their own email or name. They'll answer the emails and do all the things as the sales lead, as the rep, which creates the illusion of that superpower rep who actually is following up on everything and actually doing all the things that you're supposed to be doing. Right. And honestly, that's 80% of the work. So us sales folks on the phone, not that it doesn't take a tremendous amount of skill and energy, it's just not the full package. So if you think you need a closer and somebody who can rock out and be a relationship person on the phone all day, all you just did was create a bunch of work that actually gets sales done that no one's doing. And I think and the worst thing to do is to have people like me, who is, maybe your superstar closer rep. I suck at doing proposals and task lists and managing things and what's next, and put me on stage. I'm effectively I'm a performance artist. I suck at everything else, and that's why we built the machine, if you look at it, is 80% ops with a performer, that can actually now perform.
That's great. Let's talk about on stage. So you told me offline that you've been hosting podcasts for five plus years. I've been a guest on your podcast, which I thoroughly enjoyed. You do the Leaders of B2B podcast. I want to hear more about the strategy. We talked offline about kind of how the sausage is made. There's this, it's new to me. I don't know how new it is in the startup ecosystem, but this idea of creating content with prospective clients, leading that relationship with adding value in the hope that would end up, generating a new client or a small percentage of new clients. I want to hear kind of about that idea and that strategy.
Sure. Yeah, I sort of organically discovered this, and it wasn't new. People have been doing this, for a while. But let's imagine that the most important thing for a sale is really a relationship. Like, people buy from people they like. How do you get a relationship? Like, who's the most interesting person in the room according to all the networking gurus? It's not the person who talks about themselves all the time. It's the person that asks the most questions. And so,
Dale Carnegie.
Yeah, right. And so, how do I put myself in a position whereby I am the question asker on a regular basis? So I kind of set out with that thesis, and I have to interview people. Well, I don't know how you interview people. Oh, there's this new thing called podcasts, or not new, but at that point it was a little bit like, sure. What do you do there? And we just decided, let's try to get people to come on our podcast. This is 5 years ago. And how would we do that? So we hired an outbound lead company for LinkedIn, which again at the time was sort of a newfangled thing to do. Like, hey, we're going to drip people messages on LinkedIn, and now everybody's sort of tired of that. But that was new, and it was an outbound mechanism. We said, but we don't want you to pitch. All we want you to do is invite people to be on the podcast, and we want you to get the CTO. And we started doing that, and shockingly, people said yes. And some of them were big people and important people and more important people. And we just slammed out episodes where I got to talk to CTOs who was our target client, and we could sound smart and provide them with a vehicle that made them kind of look and sound like a hero, because the purpose of the show, and this was a good insight, it was like, make the show about what you want them to feel good about talking about, not about you, right? So we made the show about how do you be a software engineering leader, effectively. And they got to talk about themselves. And then we would take that content, and we didn't do it as well as we do it now, but, just sort of post it on LinkedIn, or like give them videos, give them social content, brag about them. And then we were effectively the theater owner that made them look awesome. So put them in the value seat. And I didn't associate this at the time, but then sometime thereafter, read all the Robert Cialdini type of, sort of influence and psychology and all that stuff. And it was really, it was a reciprocity play before I knew what that word was. That if I provide someone value first and in a compelling way, they may likely have the inclination to provide value to us when we ask for something. And so then we could gently ask to, hey, could I ever talk to you if in that case if we were trying to hire, high-end developers, right? So like if you ever need people to add to your team, like, it sounds like a culture that we would like to work with. And so that thing all coalesced, and then we work with a company called Content Allies that does this now as a service, and Jake, the founder of Jake Jorgovin. If you're ever interested in B2B podcasting, that playbook is fantastic. And just 8 months into making the Leaders of B2B from zero, episode 0, we have substantial PR agents reaching out and saying, will you interview our CEO? Instead of the whole like, hey, will you be on my show? And then people start, wow, you're an influencer. What do you think about this? And I just think that's hilarious because, I'm an influencer. What? I'm just a dude in my living room with a decent mic. But, and you talked about it, the conversations that you get to have are awesome. And
yes.
It's almost like a master class because, I've gotten to talk to all kinds of people that, why would they take my call? I'm just some schmuck, But no, I get to have them on and pick their brain for a half an hour, and they're happy about it. I mean, it's just a magnificent mechanism, and it feels so authentic and good. And then take that and turn that into, again, on the ops side, right? Like, I get to do the cool part. The ops side's all the work. Take that and turn that into all the content and post a whole bunch of times on LinkedIn and tag them and make graphics and make videos and write custom posts and write blog posts and like so much work. You know, like, I'm not that guy. I wouldn't do anything with it. I'd be the guy with a terabyte of video on my hard drive, never watching it again.
Yeah.
So again, like, ops is everything, right? That's the strategy. So.
Yeah, I remember you and I spoke about this, and we kicked off the Few show, and we were seriously considering using Content Allies. And you were like, Jim, you can do this yourself, but it's freaking hard. And I can say, like, after we've done 100 episodes, it's freaking hard. And we have a team of 7.
That's exactly right.
Not including my co-founder and I that do the calls. We actually have 3 of us now that do the calls. But it's hard. And the only reason we went that direction is because we're just a people business. We have the resources. But I can tell you that I wouldn't recommend other people do it themselves. It's just back to the idea, or not back to, I guess we haven't talked about it yet, but I talk a lot about the idea of highest and best use of time in the right seat. And I think for the vast majority of companies, it makes sense to outsource that process. And we're like, for David and I, we literally just show up and do the calls. That's it.
Yep. That's all you want to do.
I know that's what Content Allies provide too. It's just worth it, because else, to your point, you end up with a terabyte of video on your hard drive, and you've spent all these hours, talking to people, and you're not generating anything, and then you're disappointing people when it doesn't get out. So it's just, I don't know. It's not ideal, I think, to.
You have exactly the kind of business that lends itself to build that. But I mean, you're completely right. Like, I tell people all the time, it's like the economics of it. And I should say, like, Content Allies is an Add1Zero client. But before that, Content Allies was an Add1Zero vendor. So we bought this and we're a customer, and we liked it so much that we approached Jake and said, can we help scale this thing? Like, this is awesome. Can we run your sales? So I can authoritatively say that we tried to do all this ourselves. It was awful, impossible. It just won't happen. You will never release, and you never write all that content, and you'll be constantly pissed off at yourself for not doing it and leveraging it properly. And watching professionals actually do that, and the amazing nature of 4 or 5 like really compelling pieces of content going out on my social and my blog all the time, and I'm just like, this is incredible.
Yeah.
And I get 58 people being like, dude, this is so great, and I would never do that. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
So yeah, you're so right, and that's what I tell people too. Is like, it's a gold mine if you do it right, but to assemble that pipeline of people with the project management and all this stuff, and to do it for frankly the cost that Content Allies provides, I think is outrageously good for that. There is no way I would attempt to even think of doing this by myself.
Yeah, and I miscounted earlier. We have 8. We just hired a full-time writer.
Yeah,
because our producer was handling the post. Now we have a full-time writer that's cranking out content. So
it's exactly what it is. Depending on how, like, writing is the last piece. Like, that's the long-form piece and the SEO that goes along with that. And so people will say, well, I don't know, whatever. Let's say $6,000 a month, right? Like, top-end package or something like that. Oh, well, gosh, that's $72,000. I mean, I could hire my own person to do that. And the fallacy of that statement is that those hours are divided, and that cost is divided across a pipeline of 8 different, very distinct skills.
Yes.
So if you can find the superhero who has enough time and all the skills to do that for $72,000, hire them. Buy them a house, because it's impossible. You can't do it.
No, there's a huge variety of skill sets that just you need. We have researchers, SDRs. My co-founder and I, and our chief of staff host. We have a producer. We have a full-time video editor, full-time writer. And it's like that's a myriad of different functions. You're not going to find that in one person.
And do you really want your audio and video editing human to be your graphic designer and also be your writer? Like, it's impossible.
Doesn't work. Yeah.
And then which of those creatives is going to be a project manager? Like, forget about it. Like, that's not going to happen either.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's just it's a neat thing. I think it's fun to sell because I'm passionate about it, and that's why we wanted to get involved. And I have seen the benefit of that. Just like I said, just 8 months of doing this, people reaching out to us and will you interview my CEO? And it's like, like a unicorn company. I'm like, okay, I'll do that.
Yeah, we got our first of those. We've done about 100 episodes. We got our first one. I screenshotted it to David, my co-founder. I'm like, look at this.
We made it, dude.
They're like, we saw the previous episode on LinkedIn. We'd love for you to interview our founder, CEO. I'm like, that's awesome. We didn't have to reach out. We didn't ask. And then we've also got about 5 PR communications agencies that send us guests all the time. And that's a nice win-win too.
It is. Yeah. And so we work with folks like that too. And there's some good ones like Speak on Podcasts. Kitcaster is a good friend of ours. Interview Valet is another one. There's a bunch that reach out and they do nice stuff for you. They'll say, hey, I left you a review on your podcast. I thought this was good. We have a client that, might be good fit for you, and they'll let us choose. They're not pushy about it. And I'll say, well, here's what I'm looking for. Does this fit or not fit? Here's the conversation I want to have. And it's just a nice ecosystem. I think podcasting is amazing. And people say all the time, like, oh, it's saturated. We missed the boat. Hell no, you didn't. Because it's about the conversation with that person and the authentic, real conversation. Like, even if you and me did nothing in a podcast right there, like, we would look at this and be like, hey, we have a relationship. We built rapport. We talked about real stuff. Like, I know about your kids now. Like, it's all the things you hoped would happen in a discovery sales call, but it won't because people have their guard up on, it's like, I know you're going to pitch me something, so I really don't want to be nice to you.
Yeah. I remember, too, reading a statistic. I wish I could remember this accurately, but was it like less than 1% of all podcasts generate more than 3 or 5 episodes? I mean, like, very, 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 very few actually produce more than just a handful of episodes. So they don't stay the course. So, I mean, you can easily rise above all of those by just...
I think you're right, though. It is right about that 100 episode mark where people start to take you seriously now. I mean, like, I think everybody thinks this is a great idea. I should make a podcast. Like, it's an outrageous amount of work. And I think that that's the part that kicks you right away. It's like, you can record stuff, but editing, publishing, hosting, distribution, nobody listens to my thing. I get disappointed, like, when I have 2 downloads and they're both my mom. Like, I mean, but that happens for a long time, right? So I would encourage everybody to do it, but, like, get serious about it, like, and think about, like, if you aren't going to monetize your audience, it's very rare that you're going to, run ads and, like, make money like that. So I tell people, especially in the B2B space, like, this is a place that you can get conversations that you wouldn't be able to get, and you can do a service to your potential client, and some of them will turn into revenue relationships, and the rest will accrue to your content marketing and your, sort of thought leadership, credibility, and that's a good thing, right?
Let me ask you this. I struggle with this, and I think that I'm probably not alone. I have a problem asking. And I'm so turned off by the pushy salespeople of yesteryear that the pendulum has swung too far for me. But to keep it on topic for the podcast, right? So we lead with value. We lead with building this relationship. We create tremendous amounts of content, make the guests look great. I struggle to just kind of like share what we do. Now, we do that in a couple emails gently, but I'm curious what you would say then. I'm curious how you handle that personally in terms of introducing, what you do as a business and kind of making that gentle pitch.
I am a sales guy. I've learned, a long time ago that, telling is selling, right? Like, so I must make people aware of what we do. And if I sincerely believe that thing adds value, then I should ask for an opportunity to tell them. And so occasionally right after an interview, I'll just be like, I think I did it to you. And I mean that in an authentic way. Like, Jim, you're a compelling guy. You would be a good host. Have you ever thought about the podcast channel for your business? And we had a real conversation about that. I don't do that in all of them because that's a lie. Some of the people I talk to would be horrible hosts. So there's that, and then, but you could take the soft route and just make sure you follow them on LinkedIn and comment on their posts and like sort of work the slow sort of thing. And like, hey, I thought about you, saw this article. I mean, there's a lot of ways to do multi-touch if you aren't comfortable with the ask. I like to go right in and say, listen, this may or may not be a good fit for you. Mm-hmm. I did not call you here to pitch to you, but this just occurred to me. And, here's the thing. And look at it and turn it around a little bit. And if you have questions, let's do a call. And a lot of times people are just cool with that. Everybody has a business problem they want to solve. And so I don't know. Look, if you don't ask for money, no one's ever going to give you any, But, then I guess the flip side of that is, like, I was always told, sort of, if you want money, ask for advice. If you want advice, ask for money. So, again, this vehicle is nice to be able to, I don't know, man, what do you think about that? And like, hey, help me out with this problem. And it becomes like a peer group. But people I interviewed years ago still go, hey, man, how's it going? I talked to them for 1 hour. And they remember they talked to Ledge because I made them feel good on a thing. And I'm just like, that's wild, man. Like, can you remember somebody you met 3 years ago at some random networking coffee meeting and had a 15-minute conversation with? Like, I can't. But podcast people, they sure remember you. Yeah,
that's interesting. Do you have, this is a difficult and probably maybe an unfair question to ask, but I'm curious the way you think about close rate percentage. We do X number of podcasts following this methodology. What might we expect in return? And also, like, I think there's an element. I talked to David, my co-founder, about this. Like, I feel like we need to keep the faith, right? Like, so we've done 100 shows. We've not yet closed a deal from that, but made incredible connections, built incredible relationships, and we have a very high LTV. I mean, our LTV, our ARR from like one client generated could easily be $500,000 million a year from one client. So it's different. So what would you say? Like, can you set a rough goal on what you would hope someone might get in as far as a return?
The hottest I've ever run is about 10% of my interviewees have converted to either a referral partner, an actual partner where revenue is transacted, or a direct client.
That's outrageous.
But that's the hottest we ever ran, and I'll go cold sometimes too. And so it wouldn't be out of line to say 5 though. 5 out of 100. But again, like, it has to align with, like, are you talking to the people that are at least in your target demo? Because that's important. Sometimes people get into this, like, I just like talking to influencers or, whatever. Like, well, those might be referral partners, but then you have a different pitch to them. You just basically like, I know you touch my client in a tangent way. Is there a way we could collaborate on that? So you are pitching them. You're not pitching them on a sale. Yeah. And so would you consider that a close? Like, because if you ever got a referral from a guest, then I would in fact call that like somebody you should count into that metric.
Oh, yes, I agree. Yeah, I agree. And we have relationships like that are building. But, and I told David, I'm like, we could do 300 interviews and land one big time client or be connected to a big time client, and it's so more than worth it. I mean, so it really does depend on the business. And I would also argue for clients that have, or for people doing this that have kind of a lower LTV client, they're going to be more likely to close that, 5 to 10%.
Yeah, I mean, like you're talking about it, like, look, you also can't, what else are you going to do? You can't hang out a Google ad to sell $1 million thing. Your entire business is based on executive networking. And at least this is another vehicle to get you executive networking meetings. Yeah. And I think that's the same thing for every high ticket client. That's why it's such a good vehicle for people we work with, because this isn't like a click the buy now button and spend $500,000. Like, what? I always tell people, like, I'm not going to tell you this is perfect, but what else are you doing? Like, if you aren't on the phone with 3 CEOs from your target customer every week, then what the hell are you doing? Yeah. Because, like, you have no choice. Like, this is the only thing. So at least let us get you those calls. And whether or not you call it a podcast, record the thing and make content. We all agree you need content marketing. We all agree that you have a target client list, and that's called ABM. And you have an outbound regime that probably returns like 1% on your cold emails and calls. If you do it this way, let's get a 10% to 15% return on your investment to get the direct networking call with the CEO of the company that you actually wanted to talk to, and you get free content marketing out of it. Like, this is brain dead, people. And it's just that, a lot of times we talk to people that are just so stuck in, like, well, I should make white papers, or I should make webinars, or whatever. I mean, this is the jam. buy it or don't. But to say podcast or play out is completely misses the point of the fact that you need to be on the phone with those people. Let's at least make it valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. Ledge, this has been fun. Way like tons of value, tons of content. I have like a million other things I want to talk to you about.
Well, we'll have to do number 2.
Yeah, I'm good with that actually. Like I really have a ton of things. Like, I researched your LinkedIn, your post. I have all these quotes from you. We so didn't hit like 10% of what I wanted to talk to you about.
Let's do it. Let's do it next time.
Yeah,
I love it. Yeah.
So website is add1zero.co. It's ADD, the number 1, and then 0 spelled out .co. Ledge is on LinkedIn and shares a lot of really insightful content there. That's /IN/David Ledgerwood, all spelled out all together. And we'll certainly have those on the landing page as well. But Ledge, seriously grateful for your time. This has been incredibly insightful. I can't wait for people to consume this content and get value from it.
Thank you so much for having me. Love this stuff. You guys are doing great work.
Thanks. Likewise. Cheers.